For the next 30 minutes, we will explore the unexplained. From mysteries beyond our galaxy to ghostly phenomena in our own backyard, we will dive into our psychic abilities and explore everything from conspiracies to the just plain weird. Welcome to 30-odd minutes. If the truth is out there, we will find it. But only by sheer accident.
Yeah! Hey! Welcome back. Welcome back to 30-odd minutes. Great to be with you. How you doing? No, really. How are you? Everybody good?
Yeah.
Great to be here with the Oddballs live in our studio here in Massachusetts, but actually also from the mothership. You can see behind me, we're floating out in space. Tonight's theme, UFOs. We're going to be talking about UFOs, national security. We're going to have a paranormal clip of the week. It's going to be awesome. You saw the new introduction. Thank you, Andy Lake. Killer job on that. Yeah, all right, Andy. Amen, brother. Nicely done. And that was the 30-odd crew, of course, out there as well. Lots of other new things. We've got a new website. Come on, check this out over here. There it is. Our new website. Here's what's really cool about this. You can not only watch us live on the show and download previous episodes, you can get involved. There's a little button down here where you can click on the wrong thing, which is great. You can click on a button to join our chat room. And if you join our chat room, these fine folks over here to my right, there they are. There's Sarah and Rob. They're going to be watching your chats, and they can pass your questions along. So very excited about that. All right, tonight's show. There I am. There I go. There I am. Hey, good to be with you. Tonight's show, again, about UFOs. This is a subject I've been interested in my whole life because it's something that I think my father instilled in me, but I had an experience. I had something happen when I was about 13 years old, living in Newtown, Connecticut. And it's interesting. We're going to talk about this more later, but here's what happened. It was about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and my dad went up to the pool to close it. Something odd is going on. He went up to the pool to close it, and he starts screaming. What the? So he starts screaming, Jeff, get out of here, hurry up, get out of here. Bloody murder. My dad doesn't scream like that. So I run downstairs, go to the back door, and say, what's wrong? He said, there's a UFO in the sky right there, I swear. So I start walking out and saying, well, you're crazy. What's going on? I turn around. There's a giant ring of lights in the sky. It's huge. It's acres big. We watched this thing for 2, maybe 3 minutes. Minutes. That's a long, long time. I mean, we could have run in and popped popcorn and come back out and still seen it. The next day, it was on the front page of the newspaper. A lot of people were talking about it. And I'll never forget, because you have to start thinking about the big questions. Are we alone in the universe? It would seem to me to be horribly inefficient if we were the only life in the universe. Think of how big this table is. And for it to be set for just us here on Earth, it doesn't make much sense. So tonight we're gonna delve into that, and I'm excited. But first, before we get into that, we did get an email this week. Huh? All right. Email still works. Good to know. Dear 30-odd minutes, let's cut to the chase. I love the show in all of its unedited glory. And here we are proving it. So I have some suggestions for future shows I would like you to consider. Number 1, we want to see more Tiffany Johnson because, hello, she's the bomb. All right, previous guests, Tiffany Johnson. Number 2, you should really start wearing a tie.
You're not a necktie guy.
I'm not a necktie guy. I wouldn't even know how. The clip always gets stuck, and then I don't know what to do. Number 3, shout out to the crew behind the scenes. They're awesome. Yeah! All right. Rob and Sarah and Andrew and Andy and Matt, thank you. Shout out to you guys. And last but not least, I'm from West Virginia and would love you to do a show on the Mothman. Lots of love and light, Richard Brock, West Virginia. Richard, thanks for writing. We will definitely do a Mothman show. What do you say, guys?
No, definitely.
Yeah. Harbingers of Doom. We will definitely get to that very soon. So, but tonight, UFOs, and we're very lucky to have our guest tonight, Richard M. Dolan, a native New Yorker. Richard Dolan holds a master's degree in history, man after my own heart. Before studying anomalous phenomena, he studied U.S. Cold War strategy, Soviet history, and international diplomacy. And in 2000, he published a 500-page study called UFOs and the National Security State, a book Apollo 14 astronaut Dr. Edgar Mitchell described as monumental. Here tonight with his new book, there it is, UFOs and the National Security State, the cover-up exposed 1973 to 1991, from his home in Rochester, New York. Please give it up for author, historian, ufologist, Richard Dolan.
Yeah!
Hey. How are you, Richard?
Thank you for having me on. It's this is really cool doing a Skypecast like this.
Isn't this cool? This is like the
I love
future. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We are excited to have you here talking about UFOs. How does one even become a ufologist? Do you just wake up and say, I'm a ufologist?
Almost. I was doing a doctoral dissertation, as you were kind of referring to that period of my life. About 15 years ago, I was in a bookstore, really just kind of ambling around, not looking for anything in particular, and I saw Timothy Good's book called Above Top Secret, subtitled The Worldwide UFO Cover-Up.
Right.
I had never seen that book before. I had never heard of it before. And I would say that my knowledge of UFOs, this is around 1993, 94, was totally average. I had heard a little bit of this thing called Roswell, maybe. I'd heard allegations of a cover-up. I didn't really know much more about it. But I saw his book, and the thing that got me was that as I flipped through the pages, I recognized many of the names he was including because I had been studying them when I was doing U.S. diplomacy studies at the University of Rochester. And it struck me as odd, you know. I mean, here I've read about James Forrestal, I'd read his diaries, and here's Timothy Good mentioning James Forrestal, American Secretary of Defense, in connection to UFOs and things like this. And I thought, this is too strange. I have this official history that says there's no such thing as UFOs, and then here's this book that looks pretty good. It looks like it's well documented, and I wonder if there's any truth to it. So I bought the book, and very quickly I would say I became obsessed to the maximum degree, so that within a few months after that I was just scarfing up every UFO book I could find, going to libraries, finding obscure, out-of-print books. And the next thing I knew, almost immediately, I started taking very meticulous notes through all of this research, and that allowed me to write the book that then became UFOs and the National Security State. That is a history that covers really the first 3 decades or so of during World War II and then the Cold War up to the early 1970s. The history of the sightings, the military policies, to the extent that we can understand the nature of the cover-up, and then also the history of civilian groups trying to end the secrecy. That's all in that 500-page book. When I wrote that book, I was not expecting, I mean, I knew I had a pretty good book, or at least I thought it was good, but I wasn't expecting readers to really latch onto it. And I had readers writing to me saying, wow, excellent book, what about the rest of the story? Because it ended in 1973. And I thought, well, I'd better get moving on that. And so now, it's many years later, it's 2009, I finished a 600-plus page follow-up to that first book, and that takes the story up to the end of the Cold War, up to 1991. And it's called UFOs in the National Security State, subtitled The Cover-Up Exposed. And I'm very happy with this book. It is at the printer as we speak, and I expect it back. I was hoping to have it back this week. Either this week or next week, I think it will be ready for me to ship.
Right. Well, we're excited to see that. And I'm curious, what happened? I mean, what was it about 1971? Why is that the line in the sand that delineates the two books?
Well, actually, I broke it in 73, but nonetheless,
Sorry,
why is a good question. And the answer is, I almost broke that first book at the end of 1969. That would have been a very good breaking off point because that was the end of the Air Force's Project Blue Book. It was also the timing of the so-called Condon Committee, which was a scientific study by the Air Force to slap down UFOs, so to speak. But I took it to 73. In a way, there was a big wave of sightings in 1973, and one point that I wanted to make was, time and again, the official word was that there's no such thing as UFOs. And time and again, whoever was behind the UFO phenomenon never seemed to get the memo. So in 1973, you have this major wave of sightings again, and I thought it was appropriate to end the book on this statement that no one has been able to control that phenomenon. I also ended it there because it was about as far as I was physically able to take the story.
Right.
Until I felt like collapsing.
These things are.
It was good. It was good to do it that way.
Yeah, these things can be a marathon, no doubt. Well, I mean, let's talk about national security a little bit. In the 1970s, we've got the stealth bomber. I mean, people reported seeing large black wings in the sky. They were. In some cases, they were just seeing, a military aircraft that was top secret. We all know Area 51 doesn't officially exist, but all of us with access to Google Earth has seen it.
It's obviously there.
Yeah, right.
It actually now does officially exist to the extent that the U.S. government will give a kind of indirect acknowledgement of it.
Right. But so at what point does I mean, I remember seeing one study that suggested UFO mania actually added to national security, because if they were running a test flight of some new aircraft and someone cried UFO, well, that wasn't so bad for the U.S. military.
Well, let me speak to that, because it's an important point, and I think it really just demands clarification.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, in 1997, the CIA's official historian made exactly the argument that you're giving right now, which is that essentially he said, yeah, it turns out the CIA was interested in UFOs all these years, even though we said we weren't. Reason being, people were seeing classified aircraft, mistaking it for UFOs, and we didn't want anyone to know. Well, that sounds great until you actually investigate the details of the explanation, and then you realize how bogus it is. So, for example, that historian was saying back in the 50s that half of all UFO sightings were of the U-2 spy plane, which is absolutely absurd. The U-2 flies at 80,000 feet straight as a string. It doesn't hover, it doesn't land, it doesn't, vertically land, and so on.
Right.
Now, in the 1970s, it is true that the U.S. Air Force was working on developing stealth technology, but it has to be pointed out, at least in terms of any history that you can find, and I have looked for, stealth technology in, say, 1975, 76 was in its bare infancy. There were a couple of demonstrators that were out at Groom Lake by Area 51, and by a couple, I mean like two, that were actually flying. They were in an unusual shape, but even those, I think it's a stretch to say that they would be easily mistaken for a UFO. The stealth fighter was not operational until about 1983. Now, that's interesting, because that is the first major year of the infamous Hudson Valley UFO sightings, in which a lot of people saw these boomerang-shaped aircraft, triangular-shaped aircraft, and superficially, one might say, these might resemble the stealth fighter. The problem with that explanation, as I have looked over and over again at this, is that A, a lot of the UFO sightings over the Hudson Valley were of circular objects, just like the traditional ones. But B, the ones that were boomeranged and so forth hovered, had vertical motion, were silent. I mean, in other words, they had behaviors that were absolutely unlike anything you get from a stealth aircraft.
Right.
So it's a problem to this day explaining what those objects were.
Well, before we get into the 80s, I mean, pictures speak volumes. So you've sent us a couple of clips. Let's start here at March 23rd, 1974 in France with this clip that you sent over. There it is.
Oh, yeah.
Can you talk about this?
Right. Yeah, that's a bizarre photograph, because it's a photograph from a place called Albiosque, France. We don't know a lot about it. There was a spate of UFO sightings taking place in Spain and in France in early 1974, which was when that photograph was taken. Right. It was sent anonymously to a UFO researcher. There are a lot of people who... now, I will say one other thing, in that there were witness accounts that had a UFO existing in that particular area at that time. So that's about all we know of it.
Right,
it's interesting, though. A lot of skeptics said, well, that a light beam cannot stop in midair like that. It's it's got to be a fake or a hoax.
Right, right. Well,
but it's not necessarily true. Ionized air, light can, from the readings and research that I have done, can actually, in certain instances, end in that manner. So,
right.
Well, it's a cool picture.
Let's take a look at this other one. March 18th, 1975, taken in Hamilton. This is another.
These are good. Yeah, this is an excellent series.
Now,
of photographs.
this is for people who, if anyone has ever seen a U-2 spy plane, by all means, go Google it. Check out what one looks like. It looks like an airplane. This does not look like an airplane.
No, and this has an amazing story to it. The photographer was a 19-year-old bird watcher, a fellow by the name of McCarthy, and he was near Hamilton, Ontario, not far from where I'm living in Rochester, New York. He hadn't had any luck looking for birds. He had a nice camera with him. And as he was getting ready to leave, he apparently saw this object, and he took a number of photographs of it. And that's the three main ones right there. He was so taken by what he photographed, he didn't even go home. He took the film. This is before digital, of course, to the a local developing store, like a place where you get the film developed. They developed it right there on the spot. He got actually a very high level of documentation confirming everything that he had done. The guy did a great job, in other words, in documenting the case. It was investigated by a number of photo analysts. It was sent to a number of the U.S. UFO organizations, including APRO, the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization out in Tucson.
Right, right.
And they gave us some publicity. And like a lot of these sightings and photographs back then, they received minimal investigation, not really a lot. When you think about it, there's not an awful lot you can do with these. You can give them to a photo expert, and he can study the negatives, and about the best he can do is say, yep, it looks legitimate.
Richard, hold
That's
on here.
it.
We have a question from our chat room. Do tell.
Sure.
Miss Sarah, what do we got?
We do. We have a question from Ed, and he wants to know if there's any correlation between sightings and military installations or power plants.
Okay, fair enough. Did you hear that, Richard?
Yes, absolutely I did. There is definitely a correlation between UFO sightings and nuclear facilities. There actually was a pretty good study done by a PhD statistician named Donald Johnson. In fact, I cite that study in my new book, and the exact citation escapes me at the moment. Regarding military installations, there's been less formal study done of this that I'm aware of, but it does seem to me that there's a great deal of interest by these objects and our military installations. The question then arises, is this something that we're flying or not? The reason I'm suspicious that it's something we're flying is because frequently our jet fighters are sent to intercept these things. So in other words, if it's a deep black project, you have to ask yourself, why after 60 years our jets are continually trying to chase these things. I mean, one of the things that my research brings out in the first and now second volume of my study is that our jets and the jets of other nations are continually going after these things. So the question is, who on Earth, who off the Earth is flying them?
Right, right. Well, okay, well, let's get into the 80s here, because one of the things that happens in popular culture, of course, reflects, Hollywood movies reflects what's happening in society. We have movies like E.T. and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where aliens, not so bad, kind of friendly, maybe something good coming along. So, and then we've got, like you said, more sightings. Let's look at a couple more of your clips. This was taken October 8th, 1981 in Vancouver.
Oh, yes.
So you're looking up in the upper right of your screen there, off the mountain, a shiny disc shape.
Yeah, I'm wondering if I gave you a close-up of that. But even on this screen, I think that any viewer in the top right quadrant, you can see this object. When you zoom in, if you're able to, it is an absolutely crystal clear flying saucer.
Right.
The interesting thing about it is in Vancouver, outside Vancouver, in British Columbia, a woman and her family were on vacation. She was taking a picture of the mountain. She didn't see the object. She didn't see this flying disc in the sky. You get this so many times. People don't see them. They take a photograph, and then lo and behold, they look at the photograph, and boom, there's this weird thing. That particular photograph had outstanding analysis done to it. The negative itself was analyzed by Dr. Richard Haynes, PhD, who worked at the time with NASA Ames Laboratory in California.
Right.
I know Richard Haynes, and he did a detailed analysis, which has been published in scientific, sober journals.
Right.
It's as far as anybody can tell, it is an absolutely authentic photograph. The family's been interviewed extensively. It's a great picture. There's really, in my opinion, no other way to interpret this. It's not a flaw in the negative. It's a clear object that is in the sky that is not an airplane. It's not a bird. It's not a balloon.
Right, right.
What
Yeah,
is it?
clearly. We can see that right along with you, no doubt.
Yeah.
Now, this next one I'm excited about. May 26, 1987, over Waterbury, Connecticut.
Oh.
This is what I
Yes.
saw. This is I didn't realize this until today when I was prepping for our interview tonight. When my dad and I saw this circle of lights, this was that event. This was the same time period. I called my dad up and said, remember, yeah, it was May, it was 1987, and this is the ring of lights that we watched in the sky. This thing made no noise. It was slow as can be. I mean, I don't know an airplane that could fly this slow, and just right over minutes we watched this. It was really incredible, and so I was excited to see you send this over, and there it is.
Well, I'm I'm amazed, actually, that you saw this. But there were about 100 witnesses, from what I understand, that saw this object.
101 now.
102. Dad saw it too.
102.
Yeah, right.
It was a slow, silent, low-flying, circular formation of lights. Is really all that you can clearly say about it, although it looks to me that it's a single, probably connected to a single object. It passed over the Interstate I-84, and I do know a lot of cars pulled over, and allegedly, a number of them claim that their cars lost power when this object flew over them. A state police officer was sent to investigate this event, and he photographed the object. So the photograph was taken by a fellow named Randy Etting, who just took the photograph. I'm sorry, not Randy Etting. That was one of the witnesses who was a pilot who saw it. I don't know the name of the police officer who photographed it.
It was, I can tell you my parents' house is about 200 yards from Interstate 84. So that's...
Oh, wow.
That's
wow.
right. We were right there. So it was incredible to see that today. So then something happens as we move into the late 80s and 90s. You know, movies like Independence Day, you know, aliens start to get tough again and here to conquer us and kill us. I mean, are we ready for the truth? Do you think the general public is ready to know that we're not alone?
Well, you know, you have family, I have family members. I think we can safely say that there are going to be a lot of people who are not ready to deal with a reality that would probably turn their world upside down in a lot of ways as they know it. On the other hand, my feeling is, in terms of psychology, you know, if it came out, the president or some other powerful person says, yes, UFOs are real and they're extraterrestrial and some of them are here on Earth, I think some people would be running in circles pulling the hair out of their head for a little while, but I think they would eventually cope with it. The real danger I see is that there would be, you know, investigating. There'd be a lot of questions, clearly. How is it that you kept this secret so long? What would this say about our national media? What would it say about our academic institutions? Clearly, it would be that they were compromised in significant ways. And then you'd have to ask yourself, how did you keep this secret? What is the nature of the secret program? And the problem is, the deeper you go into this, the more clearly it's going to seem that this has been a very illegal kind of program. In the technical sense, it has been very unconstitutional.
Right.
In other words, let's pretend, which I think is the case, that not only are we seeing these objects, but let's say that you got access to some of or more of them through either crash retrievals or some sort of hand-me-downs, which if you go through the leaks, there's a lot of this out there. There's many people on the inside who've claimed this. Let's say that's true. That would require a massive covert infrastructure to fund it, to get the whole thing going, and, in other words, an end run around our formal constitution. I have a feeling there'd be a lot of angry people about that, and I think that would just be the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
You get into the real truth of this. What if they have a better source of energy than we do? What if they have a better version of our steel or electronics? That sounds great in the long term. In the short term, however, I think it could be very damaging financially to the global markets. I think it would it'd be a very destabilizing influence and might not be the easiest thing for political leaders to handle.
What, do you think we already have some of that influence, though? I mean, do you think we have some technology? There are people who say we have technology today that was reverse engineered from crashes or whatever.
I do actually think that's the case, but I think it's gone completely black. I don't think most of the best stuff is gone into the public domain, and I'm not sure how soon it will be before it is.
I don't know, Richard.
So
do you have an iPod? I mean, those things are pretty cool.
Oh, they're amazing, but frankly, from some of the leaks that I'm getting, you know, the black covert world is well beyond, well beyond, and so it's quite possible they may not want to share everything that they've got. What if they have the ability to go off-world,
right?
As many people suspect. They may like to keep that secret to themselves. What if they do have some version of free energy at this point? What if they feel that it's not a good idea to share that? There's a lot of very difficult issues. If they have the secret and they don't feel like sharing it, they may feel that their reasons are justified, and we may not agree with it.
All right. Well, I do want to show one more clip here, bringing us up into January 12th, 1988. This one I think is just unbelievable. Gulf Breeze, Florida. Look at that. Now, I've seen this image before, and this is, I mean, can you talk about what led up to this photo?
Yes, absolutely. Gulf Breeze is, to this day, one of the most controversial events of the history of UFOs. I mean, it's one of these things where it's not just a single sighting. And it's not even just a single guy, although the photographs, one of which you're looking at, by Ed Walters, were certainly the most prominent aspect of Gulf breeze. But this is a place in Florida, northern Florida, on the Handle there, where hundreds and hundreds of people saw UFOs very consistently. A couple of people took photographs. The best were taken by this man, Ed Walters. A lot of people have tried to accuse him of a hoax, of faking this photograph. And I will just say, I'm going out on a limb here in the interview, but you'll have to read the book. Right. I do not believe that he is a hoaxer. I believe those photographs are genuine. The analysis done by Dr. Bruce Maccabee was extensive. A number of other analysts as well who looked at the Gulf breeze photographs concluded that these were not hoax photographs. But on top of that, the photographs are entirely consistent with a mass of witness testimony that went for many, many years over that area. Is totally consistent. Right.
Richard, we really appreciate you being with us. The name of the book is UFOs in National Security State, The Cover-Up Exposed, 1973 to 1991. Coming out any minute. You can see it on his website, keyholepublishing.com. There will, of course, be links from 30oddminutes.com to check that out. Richard, thanks so much for joining us.
It was my pleasure, Jeff. Enjoyed it.
All right. Take care. All right, Richard. Well done, sir. Very good. All right, moving from UFOs, we're going to get right into ghosts here. We've got a paranormal clip of the week in our last couple of minutes. Let me set this up for you. On July 26, 2009, the Midwest Minnesota Paranormal Society was out investigating the Colfax Cemetery in Colfax County, Minnesota. On the phone, we're going to get Adam Julius from the Midwest Minnesota Paranormal Society. He'll be coming up here momentarily, and we're going to take a look at some of the photos that he sent in this week. Very recent. Ringing Adam. Something just flew through the studio.
Hello?
Hey, Adam.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing great. Thanks for being with us. Again, on the phone, Adam Julius from the Midwest Minnesota Paranormal Society. So talk to us, Adam. At 12:45 a.m., you click this picture. If you could bring it up. There it is. You're looking to the left-hand side, folks. We got the picture up now, Adam. Tell us what you're feeling when you took this picture.
Well, when I took the picture, I just had like this feeling of dread build up inside of me.
Right.
And so I turned to the left and I snapped that picture. We snapped about 2 or 3 in that area, and that's the only thing we caught.
Let's take a closer look at this. There's a close-up view. Closer look at it. We're looking at a blown-up version. And then what I love that you guys did, you went a little bit further. You went back during the daytime and you took this picture.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure it didn't glare off anything.
Right, to try to debunk it. Really interesting. Yeah. And so one of our guys here, our science guy, Matt Moniz, actually had one thought for you, and we're going to put him on. There he is. How are you, Matt? Well, so what do you think this could be?
I'm doing all right, Jeff. Certain lichens are photosensitive, and they also will glow in the dark when exposed to light. And if you check out the tree, you might see a certain type of lichen that is very much similar to the type I talk about. Right. So you may want to go back and check the tree again at night with another photograph, see if it reflects the light.
So just something to check. But one thing that I think is interesting about the photo, if you look at the first one, is that it doesn't look like, I mean, if you compare the first one to the tree, it looks closer than the tree. But that's what these are. These are anomalies. We're just not sure. But Adam, thank you so much for joining us here and sharing this. We will, of course, have a link to your website on ours. And appreciate you guys out there looking for this stuff.
Yep, not a problem. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care, Adam. All right. Send us your questions at info@30oddminutes.com. Visit our website, www.30oddminutes.com. Another new thing for this week, if you've got an iPod, you can download 30 Odd Minutes right to your iPod through iTunes for free. It's all up there. Check it out. It's been a great show. We talked UFOs. We talked a little bit of ghosts. We talked... Whoa. Did you see that? Can we slow that down and get a still frame of it? That was amazing. They're everywhere. They're in here. That's what we do here. We explore the unexplained. Next week, we're going to be back talking demonology with the demonologist Adam Bly, and we're going to have some fun with the paranormal. So until next time, my people, stay odd. Yeah.